We are now recording.
Welcome to Decentralized News, our weekly coverage of the major headlines in Bitcoin and the cryptocurrency space. I'm your host, Piter, joined as always by Ozzy. We have some fascinating stories this week, so let's jump right in. Please do your own research. This is not financial advice. We're going to start with Bitcoin. There's a bunch of stories out of Bitcoin today, or this week. Bitcoin volatility is at an all-time low. This tends to suggest that we may see some volatility moving forward. Did you see this?
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's hard to have missed the fact that Bitcoin has barely budged around 30,000 for the last 3+ weeks. I think one of my other co-hosts from Not Crypto Bros was reporting how Bitcoin had only moved $300 in the span of a week, which is absolutely crazy considering the market cap.
Yeah, we also had Fed meeting. We had banks closing, which no one is talking about. We'll get a little bit later. There's still a lot going on, but yeah, very little movement. But it's just a sign that of things to come, maybe, because typically after periods of very low volatility, it trends up and down. It doesn't stay the same. So watch out. But which way is it going to go? A lot of people are predicting down. But this next story,
Go opposite of what it's doing.
yeah,
Although I
exactly.
will say there are chart indicators that I look at that do, some of them say down, but
Hard to predict for sure. But one of the things that we are seeing was Bitcoin exchanges over the weekend saw the largest one-day BTC inflow since the Silicon Valley Bank collapse, with the implication that selling pressure could increase the result. But overall, balances remain at multi-year lows. Mixed bag there.
yeah, it's a very mixed bag. We have been starting to see some relatively major inflows, which would suggest a local top. But at the same time, yeah, as we've said, exchanges are having tiny volume, which would also make any sells a little bit have more impact. So it's a double-edged sword in multiple ways, I'd say.
And there was this story that U.S. government confirming they're going to sell some of these Silk Roads over the next, year and a half or something like that. So we don't have exact data or anything like that, but just a promised sell, so to speak.
Yeah, exactly. We've got some promised sales, and promised sales can almost fud their own bags because people might try to preemptively sell before the government does.
Yeah. Trust me, bro. I'm going to sell.
Yeah, trust me. Trust me.
Well, it kind of leads pretty well into this next story. Jason Lowry, the Space Force major.
We've covered on the show a couple of times with his book.
Soft War. We want to go into a little bit what that's about before we talk about what happened to it?
So Soft War is his thesis that essentially Bitcoin is going to be an important part of a national security strategy for the US because the storing of information on blocks on the Bitcoin network, as well as mining capacity, so being able to basically harvest that Bitcoin, is going to be kind of a soft war technique that's going to be used. It's like how the US blocked Russia from joining the Olympics, the most recent Olympics, or how the world has essentially blocked Russia from participating in young sporting events, hockey and other sports, as a means of essentially soft war against them for either their actions against Ukraine or otherwise. So it's a pretty interesting and, I would argue, very valid thesis. And he argues that because of its potential implications in soft wars, the US should basically build up local mining power and start accumulating Bitcoin. So super interesting.
Yeah, well, that's what happened. And this is a quote from him. For those asking what's been going on with me, I was ordered to take soft war down and asked to stop talking about the subject publicly. Can't talk details, but things are good and I'm working hard behind the scenes. Appreciate the kind words. So I have found that really intriguing. So we have this Space Force major thesis that calls for the U.S. to stockpile Bitcoin and cultivate domestic Bitcoin mining. Interestingly, thing that I didn't hear mentioned was he also calls to extend Second Amendment, which is the right to bear arms, to this technology. So that was interesting. It's a right to bear arms for me to hold my own Bitcoin. Yeah, it's a less destructive avenue of power, to compete in the new cyber domain, because we have land, sea, air, all that. And now we have, the domain. Uh, why was he ordered to do this? I just found that really interesting.
Yeah, I
Um,
don't know.
and I mean, I'd love to hear some theories from all. Please post. U.S. intentions with BEC with Bitcoin. Maybe drop a comment, subscribe if you're enjoying the content. I mean, a lot to speculate on here. It really is just speculation, but it makes me think that they just have something cooking, like possibly like how to leverage their current dollar superiority that has its debt issues and is predicted to fail at some point into a new system they can still dominate. The metaphor I was thinking of was like at least maintain a pole position to start the new race. What do you think? What do
Yeah,
you think?
I don't know. I feel like this is something where they're worried maybe about how it looks against the current administration and whether, because Space Force was originally a Donald Trump, um, rigged.
Yeah, and like on the other side of it, like the current regime, president, they pretty anti crypto, but they seem to treat Bitcoin a little bit differently. Find that a little interesting too. The novel, or the book, which was taken, not novel, excuse me, novel theory, taken down, but it is still available online. I will post a link in the show notes, so take a look. You can read it online. Most of it has gone up because of all this. But yeah, post your comments below. We had Chat GPT makes a prediction on the Bitcoin price after the 2024 halving. So I quote Chat GPT, but I thought it'd just be a way to introduce, this as we're about, months away from the halving. So after the last two halvings in 2016, 2020, this is a quote from Chat GPT, by the way, Bitcoin reached its all-time highs about a year after. So if this pattern holds, it is reasonable to forecast a significant increase in the Bitcoin price post 2024 halving, potentially even doubling or tripling. This could place Bitcoin in the 60 to 90,000 range. Now, this is a conservative 2 or 3x compared to other models like the stock to flow model. Bitcoin's fair price right now should be 55K, and then it could go up to 500K. And that's around 17x from current levels right now. So what do you think? You agree more with stock to flow or ChatGPT?
GPT, I think's numbers are maybe more accurate for what I think the price will be halving. So somewhere around 60K is where I'd put the price at halving. And
Uh-huh.
then I would put the price post halving somewhere like at all-time highs, somewhere around 140K. It's kind of so a 2.5x essentially from level. Um, I don't necessarily. I think stock to
Two and a half from the previous all-time high, you mean?
yeah, about two and a
Uh,
half from the previous all-time high. Think the stock to flow model is way too optimistic on price heading into cycle. That's I think that's absolutely this. Uh, I think at least at this point in time, we have massive ETFs getting launched right then.
yeah,
Maybe, but
yeah. It
I
could peak out. Yeah. I mean, agree with the idea that over time, it's volatility and overall returns, like the next period is over, right? And the 100x period is over. And then, in like time that the potential goes down a little bit. So decent prediction, but it's hard. 90 seems a little low to me, but somewhere in between, yeah,
yeah,
the food and the 90, like but it's conservative estimate. I mean, well, 2 to 3 times off, you know, 30,000, whereas now, and that's a pretty good return on, and that seems conservative. So that's optimistic even in and of itself.
yeah, exactly. I would say that we're closer to the 90 than I would say the for all time high. I would say I'm still sticking with my
But like you said, like for the 90, then the 500K, like
yeah,
decreased volatility and diminishing returns. That was the general theory. Like it will go down less, but it will go up less, essentially.
exactly.
Uh,
Like I'm
as
assuming we get
it
it somewhere.
stabilized.
We get somewhere around a 10x this from market bottom, just shy of a 10x if you think about 15, like the 15K bottom to about 140K. And then,
Mm.
but we only see, rather than we see like an 80% pullback, we probably see somewhere around a 50% pullback, maybe
But
60.
see, that 10x is kind of what last time, like during COVID, it went down to like 6 or 9. There.
I thought it was
And then it went,
but
I don't know if it was that low, but anyway, I have checked. But then it went up to almost 70,000. So that's about a 10x. So assuming it doesn't quite go up 10x, pushing returns theory, it would be a little less. So I'm probably coming a little lower than you, but higher than, but anyway, fun.
yeah, it came down in February of 2020 to,
Okay. So more than 10x. So yeah, maybe right around.
yeah, that's me right now.
Yeah, that makes sense. As long as the X's are less, I can go along with it a little bit. Less X's.
Oh,
All
goodness.
right. All right. So what we got one more kind of pure Bitcoin story, but some talk about channel splicing on the Bitcoin Lightning Network. So splicing is an advanced feature or new feature on the Lightning Network, which is a second layer payments network designed to boost speed, scalability, and efficiency of the Bitcoin blockchain. It's kind of hardcore on-chain stuff. All right. So in the Lightning Network, two parties open a payment by committing funding transactions. So like a multi-sig funding transaction, they both commit money to the blockchain. If one of these parties want to add or withdraw funds, they need to close the channel and then open a new one. So just in terms of the number of transactions it takes, if you want to change like your total in this channel. So Splice will allow parties to add or remove funds from the existing payment channel without closing it. So DR and a shout out to Matt Prater, Bitcoin University, is that it leads to much better user XP on the Lightning Network as Bitcoin wallets learn to adopt this tech. It increases the fungibility between on-chain coin transactions and Lightning transactions. And to me, it just seems to increase the use case of Bitcoin as a currency, which has been limited by transaction costs and the rate of Lightning Network adoption and its complexity. So I thought that was just an interesting story coming out of the Bitcoin network. Adoption is slow. So anytime I hear something new, always exciting.
Oh, no, it's absolutely exciting. And just to touch back to our price prediction, uh, last cycle, it did about an 18.5x.
Okay, there you
And
go.
my prediction of 140 would put it at a 9.25x. So almost like essentially 50% of. So pretty on. I do like the adoption that we're seeing on the Lightning Network. It does help make those $500,000 and $1 million Bitcoin prices that people are talking about for 2030, and much more reasonable and imaginable. With
One of the hardest use cases to imagine Bitcoin is just as money because of the transaction cost. So this kind of attempts to tackle that a little bit.
exactly.
It seems like the store of value, to replace gold or real estates, that seems easier to imagine for people at this point. Where on the other hand, seeing it as currency for people.
I definitely agree. If we look at factors that might be limiting Bitcoin's price right now, we've got some regulation news.
Mm.
Has recently told Coinbase that they believe that all crypto assets except for Bitcoin are a security, which continues that line they've been towing for a while now, but continues to make Bitcoin the exception, which is interesting. And Brian kind of claimed that delisting every asset other than Bitcoin would have essentially killed the crypto industry. Because like most businesses would have been called out for operating outside the law. So they're the court to continue to provide that clarity, the easier choice than shutting down the industry in the US. But we've also seen a whole bunch of bills kind of advancing within in the U.S. Do you have some of that information on those?
Yeah, there's kind of going on. It was hard to parse through it all, but the House Financial Service Committee on July 28th advanced two landmark crypto bills that were previously under consideration: the Clarity for Payment Stablecoin Act and the Keep Your Coins Act. So one involving stablecoins and one seeming to involve just your ability to hold. Both aim to provide regulations on the issuance of payments and ensure crypto users are permitted to maintain custody of their assets in self-custodial wallets. Okay, and then on July 26th, the committee passed the Financial Innovation and Technology for the 21st Century Act and the Blockchain Regulatory Certainty Act. And then on the 27th, the Financial Innovation and Technology for 21st Century Act also passed another committee, the House Agricultural. So basically just a big week, a lot of movement going on. Response to the SEC kind of getting a setback with XRP, and then, obviously fighting strong with them, kind of fighting for a champion of all altcoins, strangely enough. They're kind of holding the line. They said, no, we're not going to delist everything except for Bitcoin. So interesting to see how this is going to play out. But yeah, there's a lot going on. What I wrote out the stable coins and the Keep Your Coins Act was that there was not a lot of bipartisanship with it. That was kind of party line.
With the Keep Your Coins Act, it was relatively bipartisan. It was 35 voting, which meant, and the is 50 split between Republicans and Democrats. You had to have at least had about half the Democrats on the vote in favor. So it was bipartisan, because the Services Committee is a bipartisan committee. So it's not perfect, but there was definitely better signs than what we've seen in previous elections.
But it just goes to show all the hoops that legislation has to go through. It's got to pass through all these committees. Then it's got to go from one side, either the House or the Senate, to the other side, to the House or Senate. Then it's got the president's desk, and right now, imagine anything getting by, President Biden, at the moment. So but yeah, we have seen some movement in terms of creating laws, and clarifying things.
Yeah, no, it definitely does. So I'm very interested to see.
Keep an eye on it.
Yeah, I mean, they're proposing that crypto is regulated both by the CFTC and the SEC. So they're talking about stance, and shows that the SEC isn't running the game, but Congress is taking a little bit more charge. So
yeah, hopefully they get some clarity. I mean, the bill being considered great, especially from me coming from kind of like a bias, such a crypto pro Bitcoin stance, but still, any is good clarity. It's like, even if it's not on the know, just knowing sometimes is very important,
Yeah.
And then we had other interesting news on the legal front. One that wasn't in our list of stories, but I guess that Hex founder, the SEC is going after him for supposedly like spending on luxury goods, which seems almost too obvious not to go after. But anyway, SEC note, but they seem to be going after Hart and the Hex guy. And he's always flashing like such crazy stuff. Like he looks ridiculous, like wearing all this Gucci and whatever. So I'm quite honestly, but on the other, it's very disappointing. Prosecutors dropped another charge against FTX, Sam Bankman Fried. So prosecutors, this is the prosecutors, not the defense winning an argument or something. The prosecutors told the judge on Wednesday they were dropping charges on conspiracy to make unlawful campaign contributions. Very disappointing, because they failed to obtain permission from the government of the Bahamas for the charged. This is the quote. It has been informed that the Bahamas notified the United States earlier today that the Bahamas did not intend to extradite the defendant on the campaign contributions count. Oh, whoops. Okay. So accordingly, we're going to keep with the treaty with the Bahamas. The government does not intend to proceed to trial on the campaign contributions count. Now, looking into this, it got even more disappointing. The U.S. Attorney's Office in Manhattan also previously dropped another charge against him for the same reasons, and it was the anti-bribery charges. So there's still a bunch of charges against him, and he's still going to go to court, but bribery and elections. It just seems to insulate people politically, and it's just a little disappointing to hear this.
Everyone's disappointed. I can only assume that part of the reason is it's maybe a bit harder to charge, like to prove, and considering they have a number of other charges, I believe there's 11 other charges against him, then feel like this is maybe,
He was smart and he gave money to both sides of the aisle, so they're patient, I guess, to sweep that part of the rug. But yeah.
so
Anyway, on the stablecoins front, and one of the regulations was around stablecoins. It's kind of interesting because it's hard to imagine the U.S. government wanting to support any stablecoin that's not the dollar. You know what I mean? Or anything the dollar. But all the same, they're out there. Which is an offshore stablecoin, USDT. Report. They were required to do this in 2021 because I believe it was a lawsuit or in a settlement. But they've kept
New York City, New York State, yeah.
But they've finished. They're keeping all so reports, and they have new all-time high up there. They're growing even as the industry is shrinking, and other stable coins are going down. But they operational profit of $1 billion, 30% decline from Q1 of 1.48 billion, but it's still more than they made in Q2 of last year. Still receiving a fair amount of scrutiny for their opaque reserve management and lack of independent audits, financial analysis, and these attestations that they're releasing.
Yeah, I mean, the fact that they had a lower profit, especially if it's still an increase over Q2 of last year, I'm not particularly concerned. If they made $1 billion, that's still $1 billion of profit. Like, Meta's metaverse arm posted an operating loss of like 3.8 billion this past quarter. So
yeah, they're making money. They're backing their up, investing in Bitcoin, things like that. But it's not totally clear exactly what they're doing with all the reserves. But it does seem to add a layer of protection to Tether, the fact that they're profitable.
Exactly, they're probably one of the few crypto companies that are actually profitable.
Yeah, fair. Well, we have a new stable coin, and this is interesting, and they have a lot of, they're trying to be like a regulated hub of cryptocurrency. But anyway, so this glimpses as to what they look like. But Hong Kong Digital Group announced on July 26th that stablecoin FDUSD will be listed on Binance. The FDUSD will be backed 1-to-1 with quote unquote, high quality cash and cash equivalent reserves. According to the press release, it will be redeemable 1-for-1 equal value in US dollars. And they're held in regulated financial institutions, segregated accounts, and monitored and audited by independent parties. From Tether, a spokesperson also confirmed that FDUSD will receive monthly audit from an independent accounting firm. So I thought that was kind of interesting, trying to differentiate themselves a little bit from Tether, see how this one does. It's available on Ethereum and BNB chain.
It's also been listed on Binance. So
talking about it a little bit.
Interesting. I'm wondering whether or not we see more coins or we see stable coins that aren't US dollar based. USD is still probably one of the biggest competitors. It'll be interesting to see how FDUSD does in the coming months and years, really.
Yeah, just to see if it can grow. I've heard this said before that until the stablecoin market comes back, the crypto market won't come back. So maybe it's something to watch just in terms of if we start to see the overall market cap of stablecoins growing, it can be a very good sign. And seeing a new one come to the scene and regulated, and this new potential hub in Hong Kong, that'd be exciting to see. It would be positive news for the space in general. Ed, did you watch Jerome Powell speak?
I didn't watch him speak this time, which is very unusual, but I've got a concussion, so I needed to take the day, because that was the day on ahead. So, but I have videos of his speech and kind of reviewed some of the material. They raised rates as we said last week, totally not unexpected. Did to raise rates by at least a quarter basis point, and almost by all, by all forecasts. And they are suggesting, based on comments, that it's going to continue to be a meetings by meeting approach for decisions. The next meeting isn't for another 50 days or about middle September. So that's there's some time for some more data to come in, including age data this Friday, and then CPI and PPI coming out next Thursday and Friday, so the 10th and the 11th. So this is kind of important. Right now is at least some forecasters favor another hike in September, somewhere around percent, with about 80% expecting rates to hold. And then predictions have gotten a little bit more bold about seeing cutting earlier. We're starting to see small bits, about 25% predicting cuts as early as January. So gotten a little bit bolder again, but as outrageous as we were seeing as early as March, if we were thinking about back to May or June, where we were expecting to be cutting rates as of September or November. So I'm not too concerned. I think a lot of maybe expecting a pause in September, with almost 30% of forecasters expecting it to be up by another quarter basis point at least in November. So maybe another pause, raise approach for a couple of meetings. We'll see how that changes.
Well, a lot of it will be affected by the data that comes in. You got unemployment and then CPI, PPI, but also some of the data, quote unquote, that was my air quotes, data, continue to crash because there have been a couple of bank closures or mergers that really haven't seemed to make the headlines. I'm a little confused. But one of the criticisms of raising these rates is that's putting a lot of pressure on banks in the banking crisis in the United States. So Canada's Heartland bank closed by the FDIC. Crisis struck again on July 29th. Kansas office of the state bank commissioner with the FDIC taking control. They down Heartland Tri Bank. His First Republic was acquired by JP Morgan in May. Prices of the week. So PacWest merged with Bank of California, with both banks seemingly looking to shore up amid, this banking industry turmoil. So, because that may stop the Feds from raising rates,
Absolutely. It's interesting he's talking about it.
I'm surprised.
It's like no one's trying to scare everyone away from banks anymore.
Yeah. Interesting. I mean, the interest rate, well, it's also their poor risk, from these financial institutions, to shake out. Maybe it's good getting shaken out. But yeah, I was looking at like the 2 years prior to this one, there were no failures. And we're up to four now?
4
officially?
or 5.
This 4, and then the merger, it's not really a failure. But that's the thing that is infinite.
Exactly. If we look at the market a little bit, Optimism has a lot of hype lately. The Optimism stack has been seeing a lot of adoption, including being used by Coinbase's own layer 2 that they're launching in November. So this is very interesting, surpassed its rival Arbitrum in the amount of daily transactions for the first time in 6 months. So that's they're getting somewhere, and I definitely thought Arbitrum was going to end up beating Optimism, but Optimism has been making some moves, and I've been seeing their stack being used more and more in other projects and tech. So good on Optimism.
I could see like these guys maybe trading lots. It's interesting to see how one very successful project can really make a difference, which was on Optimism. And so they're seeing a lot of transactions. So it just kind of like shot them ahead. And then Trim will have one decent, protocol that launches or coin that launches, and that'll shoot them ahead. And it could be like a little bit of back and forth. But also notable the Optimism's daily active wallets metrics fell short of Arbitrum. So even though there's a bunch of transactions and a lot of it is related to this WorldCoin thing, um, they still have the active users on Arbitrum. So they're not out of the race.
No, that's for sure. But talking about WorldCoin, who hasn't been talking about they're starting to face a lot of scrutiny, especially in Europe. France's watchdog has questioned the legality of WorldCoin's biometric data collection and has started an investigation into the legality and legitimacy. And then less than a day later, Data Watchdog has also announced that they're launching a series about WorldCoin and their data collection process and storage. This is two countries, European, that are kind of stepping up against WorldCoin right now, or at least investigating. So we'll see
Yeah,
what that means.
and questioning like the overall just legality of it. And you mentioned last week that Vitalik Buterin expressing concerns in the blog post about privacy, centralization, security issues. They also come under for promoting heavily in the developing world, so raising concerns about exploitation.
Absolutely. So bros, our two link in the show notes. We talked exclusively about those kind of concerns. Both my co-hosts there have done a lot in the development world around charity work and countries. So I think the are very well founded.
And then there was a fund or whatever, but about WorldCoin, who is backing them and some of the people that are backing them. So there was a Series A round in 2021 where they received investment from Sam Bankman Fried. We also had the now bankrupt Singapore hedge fund Three Arrows Capital, the co-founder Kyle Davis. He was tweeting stuff, hinting that his project. And then there's questions about their tokenomics. Their token allocation for the firm from 20 to 25%, which is a lot.
The fact that they're already holding is absolutely absurd.
Yeah, and then they just increased it. And then there was something there's going to be allowed. There's like 10 billion total world tokens, but only 143 million will be circulating at launch. So a really small amount. And the STRS is only locked for a year. So it's not really a long time considering the size of the project. This was critique from author and investor William McGuire, that the project shouldn't have it has minimal utility, which opens the gate to speculative trading. The lockup period for early investors is too short and for the project ambitions, and they can sell. So just some issues with all around it.
Yeah. Oh, there's massive concerns all around.
And I saw like a tweet for someone who was like, like kind of flexing that they got it in the United States, but then they're like, oh, but you can't, it's not like legal. The token, but I can't like do anything with it.
Yeah, and the prices dropped significantly. It was down almost 40% at launch. It rebounded a bit, but not
like in the US, like a way I can articulate it is like, okay, so I'm going to give you my biometric data, which will increase, basically I'm giving you money to increase the potential or the value of your coin that only you can sell. I can't even sell it. You know what I mean? I don't know. Whole thing's bizarre.
It's absolutely nuts. Although I'm seeing a bunch of people already trading it, and so the William Ogre's tweet is right on point because I'm already seeing tons of speculative trading on it. Just people like longing and shorting it, ridiculous amounts of leverage. So it's terrible to launch, and I think a terrible project in and of itself. I think about all these like crazy lines to the orbs. They're all essentially in developing countries where they're hoping they get
desperate for money.
Yeah, exactly.
Like $60 makes like a huge difference. Yeah, it's the nature, potentially of it. Yeah, the whole thing is just shady for my liking.
Absolutely. And we've got one last kind of fun story for all of you hunting the ZKsync airdrop. Probably second favorite DEX, Pancake Swap has added to the ZKsync Era blockchain. And Pancake Swap was originally on BNB, but it's now on 5 different blockchains, including ETH, Polygon, Aptos, ZK EVM, and now ZKsync Era. So, drop maybe doing some transactions on with Pancake Swap on ZKsync Era might just do it for you. So
Yeah, for all the trouble that Binance US has been getting into, it's nice to see some positive news for Binance.
yeah, and B
And
chain.
yeah, the BNB chain and Pancake Swap, because I've used Pancake Swap forever. I've always liked it.
Same. I find their user interface is probably one of the simpler ones, easier to understand, great for
Yeah.
onboarding. So that's kind of our stories for the week. Thank everybody for listening to Decentralized News. We post to YouTube first, so please consider subscribing if you want to catch our videos as soon as they drop. Our goal is to provide unfiltered content that will help foster genuine discussions to help the entire space grow. So please remember, this is not financial advice and we are not financial advisors. This show was presented for educational and entertainment purposes only. Please do your own research before making any investment decisions. Thanks for joining me, Peter, and thanks for support, and stay tuned for the next episode.